Hey there! Welcome to my New England garden. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about how to repot strawberries. I like to grow strawberries a lot, as I'm imagining most people do, but for me, whether or not they survive the winter can be a bit of a toss-up. Most strawberries of the variety that I grow are only good to about zone 7, which means they can only handle about minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit at most in the winter, and here it can get down to minus 20. So one of the options is just to make sure that they're really well insulated in the ground after the season is done, cut off the tops, let the roots sit down there and just be well insulated. The other option is to put them inside my greenhouse or inside the sunroom. So luckily I grow my strawberries in pots this year, and I'm going to get to do just that. Now I want to take a moment to talk about the types of strawberry plants that I have here. As I've mentioned before, basically every strawberry plant on this table, except for like maybe one, came from this plant here. This plant is what is known as a day-neutral strawberry plant. I'm not entirely sure of the variety. It's a pretty hardy one though, I'll say that, and one that gives a lot of runners. If I figure it out, I'll put it on the screen. It grows smaller berries, maybe like this big, just sort of like your standard size berry, none of the big monster ones or anything like that. And it will flower and grow strawberries so long as there's about 12 hours of sunlight during the day and the temperature stays above about 55 degrees. And as you can see, it is currently flowering and growing new berries. This other plant back here is very likely a different variety of strawberry plant, but it also has some soil issues and some rooting issues, which I'm hoping to resolve with this replanting that we're doing here. You can actually see in here, or perhaps you can't. I'll get this a little bit closer. You can see in here that this particular part, one plant in here, is like coming out of the ground. And I'm gonna have to make sure that gets in really nice and solid. Also, this soil that I used in this plant is actually native soil. And because of that, it's like really heavy and it's not great for rooting for these plants. We're going to get into why native soil is bad for potted plants in a little bit. But the neat thing about day-neutral strawberry plants is that so long as they have that 12 hours a day of sunlight, they will keep making strawberries. They don't make super big berries. They do make nice, sweet, tasty berries. They're not ridiculously sweet. They're firm. They're enjoyable to eat. And it's been doing this since June actually. Yeah, I've been having strawberries since June. And off of just this plant, which has pretty good production, and this plant, which has mediocre production, there were like a couple of red strawberries every day. Even now, there's one in here right now. And I do believe that it's ripe. Perhaps a little underripe and a little sour, but I actually kind of like that. I don't mind sour strawberry. So, the different types of strawberry plants are June-bearing, ever-bearing, and day-neutral. June-bearing is basically something more akin to the natural types of wild strawberries that you might find out in nature, in that they give you a very good load of strawberries, shockingly, in June, or usually about 30 days after it really starts to warm up. Basically, after like the end of like the cool nights and stuff like that. And if you're someone who makes jams, or you need, or something along those lines, you know, you want to make some sort of preserve, some sort of jelly, you would want June bearing, because that's going to give you a very nice big load of strawberries all at once from a small number of plants. Ever-bearing strawberries will have 2 to 3 harvests in the summer. They'll do one in June, one in late July, and one in late August, depending exactly on when spring ends and summer really kicks off. Those are also really good for people who want to do some larger canning or production things, but off of a small number of plants. But what I like about ever-bearing is if you get enough, about day neutral, is that they just keep flowering, making strawberry plants all season long. And so long as you have 12 hours a day of sunlight, in fact, like right now, there's only 11 hours a day, like 11 hours and 18 minutes a day of sunlight. These things are still growing new flowers. They're still making strawberries. In fact, some of the other plants, like this one here, which is actually a fairly young plant, it's now making strawberries as well and flowering. So this thing is not quitting. There are probably about 20 or 30 strawberries on these plants. And I don't know 100% that these are day neutral and not ever-bearing, but it's very rare for an ever-bearing strawberry plant to be producing this late in the year. It is currently October the 10th, believe it or not. So that's quite a bit late for ever-bearing, which is what causes me to believe these are day neutral. The one interesting thing is that this one grows runners like mad, which is not super common with some of the day neutral varieties, and this one does not. So they appear to be different varieties of strawberry, but like I said, this one has very poor soil conditions, so that could be a huge part. In fact, it's looking far healthier than it has through most of the year. Most of the year, I was pretty sure that thing was going to die. And in fact, I believe that 2 of the other plants inside that pot did die. So it's had a tough go of it. But the thing that I'm most excited about is the fact that I will basically be able to have strawberries all year round, because I'm going to have about 50 or so plants across 20 pots, and that's going to allow me to basically, once they all start producing, probably get a handful of fresh strawberries every single day, which is amazing. Now, with potted plants, we really have to remember that they need to be watered more frequently than a plant in the ground. I just realized there's one of my staples is in here still. Oops, keep that out. The plants in the ground, of course, have all that water coming from underneath. They don't have to be watered as much. Also, you do a good watering in the ground, the water will seep in deep into the ground and stay there. The plants will get to stretch out their roots and whatnot, and that's a great thing. You water plants that are in pots a lot more often. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that plants don't really like to get their leaves wet that much, at least not plants that live around here. It's not what they're adapted to. Also, wet leaves can lead to great ways to get powdery mildew and other kinds of funguses. So really, you want these leaves to be dry more often than not, and you want to make sure that when you water at the base of the plant. Now, one thing that will happen with really dry soil is that the water will just run through it pretty quickly. This soil is actually possibly not that dry down below, which is good, but if it had been really dry, it would have just sat there. If the whole thing had been really dry, the water just would have sat on top, but this water actually went in pretty good. But we want to make sure that it's getting all the way down, and looking at the bottom of this pot, we can see that this soil here is still really dry. And I want to make sure this soil is good and wet before we do the replanting. One of the reasons why is that dry soil is far more likely to come apart when I'm doing the repotting process. And I want this soil to be well saturated and moist so that it will not come apart in my hands as I'm doing this planting. I do actually want it to come apart a little bit because I'm going to be taking off some of the extra soil. But by and large, I'm not going to completely pull apart these roots. So we're going to give this a couple more waters. We do just passes like this. You don't want to because you don't put so much water in that it starts flowing out over the top. You want to make sure that the water you put in seeps out and doesn't wash all the nutrients out that you have on top. And you just do it again and again until the water starts coming out the bottom. Now we come to the pots that I'm going to be putting all of these strawberry plants in. Now, 3 of these pots are already pretty big. In fact, they're 12 inches across, I believe, or maybe some of them might be 10, because these are 10.7. These are the pots I chose to use. One of the reasons why is that these are going into our sunroom over the winter, which stays warm enough for strawberry plants all winter long, and they look nice, and I'm going to have 20 pots that are all the same. Now, these pots do not have any drainage holes on them anywhere, and that is no bueno. As I'd mentioned before when I was talking about watering, you really want to make sure that the water can get out of the pot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my handy dandy drill with not even a half inch. There's probably a 3/8 bit on it. And we're going to drill out a number of holes in this pot. There we go. We now have enough holes in here that we can be sure that water's not going to accumulate in the pot. I'm not going to worry about drilling holes in this part because this part is lower, so all the water should come out pretty easily. And what I'll do in the greenhouse or in the sunroom this year is I will put these things on a tray of some sort to catch that water so I don't make a big mess. We've moved on to one of the most important parts of this process, and that part is soil. Soil is everything to plants. A lot of times people think of soil as just like it just needs to be dirt for them to put roots in and whatnot, but the health of the soil is beyond important to the health of the plant. The microbes that live in the soil, the funguses that live in the soil, how things are breaking down is so important. And if you just have dead soil without anything living in it, the nutrients may not be bioavailable. One of the most important things about soil is that it needs to be living soil, ideally with roots in it. The roots create a symbiotic relationship with fungus. Photosynthesis allows the plant to create sugars out of the carbon inside the plant and the soil, and then the plant takes that sugars down, exchanges it with fungus in the soil, and then the fungus in the soil provides the plant with water that it could not get otherwise. So all of this stuff is really important. Now, one of the things I talked about before is the fact that natural soil, the soil that's in your ground, is really thick and dense. And in the ground, all of the bugs and the worms, some of which we saw before, create tunnels and pathways for the plant's roots to go. But in a pot, that's not going to happen. So we need to make sure the soil is loose and light and airy so that it doesn't get oversaturated with water and so that the roots have a place to go. And that's why that one plant I showed before that's been struggling so much has had so much trouble, because the majority of the soil in that pot is native soil, and it's dense and a little bit rocky and just not great. So one of the things that we do, and I kind of had a bad here because I didn't have time to go to a good store, but I got perlite that's from Miracle-Gro. And normally I don't do this. Normally I don't use products with fertilizers inside of them, at least artificial fertilizers, but we're rolling with it this time. Also just to show like, hey, you know, if you go to Home Depot, this is what you just might get. Perlite is basically just rock. And this rock is light and airy, and it's 8 quarts and it weighs like nothing. And what it will allow us to do is mix this in with our soil and make sure there's a lot of breathing room for the rocks in our soil. The other thing we have here is coconut coir, and coconut coir is basically just ground up coconut. This is also really great that it improves aeration and allows our plants to basically have soil that drains well and is aerated nicely. So we're going to roll with that. That one luckily does not have any stuff in it. And then I also have plant potting mix. This is also by Miracle-Gro, but this stuff is actually certified organic, which means they didn't add any of their shit to it. And what it also has is alpha meal, bole meal, earthworm casings, aka earthworm poop basically, and kelp meal. So all of these things in this soil here are bioavailable nutrients that the plant can use to start throwing nutrients off of. And one of the great things about this soil is, minus that stink bug that was just crawling along there, that this soil has been in a bag, it's been stored indoors at a garden center, which means there shouldn't be a lot of bugs in here, or hopefully none, and it should be just some great soil that we can start using to pot our plants and mixing up all nice. Alright, we're going to start by cutting open this bag, dumping this in. Oh, look at that, it's beautiful. That's the stuff right there. Alright, and as you can see, this is already a really nice, rich, light and airy soil. It's also a little bit moist, possibly a bit too moist. We're going to deal with that before we start using it. Normally what I would do is I would add in compost from my garden, or from my compost piles, but like I said, this is all going to be indoor plantings, and I really don't want the stuff that's in my compost pile inside the house. However, the pots that we're going to be using, I'm not going to be taking all the soil out, and these pots are actually filled with mostly wood chip compost, so they're going to be great. So, let's now add in the perlite. Which, as you can see, is literally just rock. Another type of rock you can use that you can get at garden centers is called vermiculite, and it is also the same sort of thing. This literally almost feels like foam. It feels and sounds like styrofoam. but it's going to be perfect for keeping our soil light and aerated. And I mean, what's gardening if you don't get a little bit dirty, right? You're going to mix this up, break up clumps, make sure it's all mixed in well. My fingernails are excellent for this. All right, and then once that's all set, we're going to dump in our coco coir, which is a more just light, rich planting medium that's going to help us have great root growth. And it's also going to help make sure that these plants don't get waterlogged and retain too much moisture. It does mean, like I mentioned before, that we are going to have to water them a lot, but I'm okay with watering my plants every day if I have to, if it means that they're going to stay healthy and give me all of the fruit that I want. Break up these last clumps, mixing in this last bag of soil. This smells amazing. It smells so good. It does not smell exactly like soil drilled compost would be in, because honestly, real compost smells like shit. Like literally. Good, healthy, moist soil totally just smells like poop. It's kind of awful, but in a good way. All right, so we can see again that it's very dry and it's still coming apart a lot. And I don't want to what I want to do is I want to have the soil be in really good condition when I start putting in the pot, so that the plants will have nutrients right away and I don't have to soak the plants to get the soil wet. So we're going to start off by watering it down. I've got my handy dandy garden rake here because as much as I want to get myself wet or get myself dirty, I don't want to get totally muddy. So we're going to use this to help turn around. And it's quite interesting, by the way, a good lesson in just like how water penetrates things, that I can like do this and this will look wet, but when I dig in, it's only wet down to the first centimeter or so. So it's actually going to take a lot of water to get all of this soil moistened. Alright, so the first one that we're going to be moving is this one. It's got a fairly large and well-established strawberry plant here, and then a smaller one here. So the first thing you want to do is just kind of massage the pot a little bit to compress the soil inside just enough that you can slide it out nice and easy. So what I like to do is just sort of splay my hand across the pot and then tip it ever so carefully. And you'll actually see that even though I've been watering this well, it's actually kind of dry. So it's an interesting lesson in just like how you do need to make sure that when you water plants, you do it frequently and you give them a good soak so that the water you do put in can make it all the way down. Now my pot is actually probably filled a little too much with dirt, so I'm just going to dump most of this out into another one, because I want to actually have the plants come up to the dirt level, be it about where that painted ends. Looking in here, that it is about level with the black. It's hard to see because it's black on black, but I'm just going to take the camera and move it so you can see that. All right. So we can see again that the pot, the soil in the pot is about level with the black part of the pot. I might actually put a little bit more dirt in the bottom. But one of the things that I also need to do is, aside from getting rock out from underneath my fingernail, one of the things I also need to do is deal a bit with how the roots on this plant. Now, a plant where the roots look like this is actually in pretty good shape. They're not what's called root bound. A root bound plant would be if you pulled this out and the roots were twisted around each other a lot. You can kind of see that a little bit right here, that some of these roots are twisted up a bit, and they'll actually kind of continue to just grow on each other in a circle if you leave them like that. So what I want to do is take some of these slightly denser sections of root and just loosen them out a little bit so that the roots can grow out into all the other new soil that I have. And just a little bit around in here as well. I think, though, this plant will do pretty good in that regard. All right. Mound the soil a bit in the middle just so it's up high as I want. Put it down, and now we're going to add more dirt. All right, I figured we'll show this one as well. This is the mother. This is the plant that grew all the other plants. And it is not to be trifled with. There are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 strawberry plants in here. There's a lot. Plus side, the roots are probably going to hold everything together really nicely. Interesting though that there aren't really any roots coming out the bottom. Somehow that means that this has been, oh, there they are. There's all the roots. We'll kind of like pull these out a little bit. I'm not seeing any grubs, which is nice. One of the ones I opened up, the one that was, it was an active pot, had a lot of stuff in it, but you could tell that it was struggling with the number of plants in the size pot. It had like a whole clown car full of grubs and stuff in there. It took a little bit to clean them all out, but this soil looks really healthy. I'm really happy with this. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually looking for, I'm looking in here to see if there's any spiders have laid egg sacs in there, because this one's dense enough that that could happen, but it looks like there were a couple of webs but no egg sacs. So look at that in its new home. These ones, there actually are 2 of these pots, by the way, that are bigger. There's 2 of them that were 12 inches. So that's what this one is, but there it is. I am nearly done with this one down. There's only 3 more to pot, and I have 4 pots. That's perfect. There we have it, folks. The repotting is complete. Here are all of the old pots, sad and empty, and just a general random mess. All right, here we are. We have 16 pots full of strawberries. Some of the runners didn't make it, and some of them I actually ended up putting 2 pots worth into one. Like, I believe this one, for example, was 2 separate little pots, as was this one, and another one as well, probably this one right here. So I ended up not using all the pots, and I had leftover soil, which is great. But we can see here's the big mother strawberry plant in the back. This is the one that I've had actually even longer, but has only really barely kept itself alive. I was able to better root some of the second plant in there, and a couple of these are not quite as high as I wanted to. I might actually take that one, and once it settles, add in some more dirt. A couple of them kind of fell apart, so we'll see how they do. But generally speaking, so long as the roots are in soil, and it's good soil, they're going to be fine. I am going to leave them out for probably another week or so. I want to give them time to acclimate, and also get as much sunlight as possible. I don't want to take them and move them indoors where they're not going to get as much light right after this repotting. I want to make sure they have plenty of time. And then what I'll probably also do, since I have extra room, is I'm going to add some mulch, like some light wood or maybe straw mulch to these as well. So there you have it. Thanks for hanging out with me.